Hot Toys has started a series of budget-friendly Marvel figures under their Hono Studios subline. But are they worth it? Let's find out together. Hey y'all, welcome back to Carbon Scoring, the best place for comics, history, and action figures. I recently bought this black suit Spider-Man, and we're going to unbox it and go through our initial impressions and decide, did we get our money's worth?
If you ever wondered what a Hot Toys shipping container looks like, here it is, just a good old-fashioned brown box. I guess it does specifically have the figure on there. It looks like there's that Spider-Man thing, but really, they've all got this unique sticker up top. So as you can see, I have not cracked this and I'm about to go crazy. So let's open it up, see the figure inside, look at the packaging, and we'll go from there. So this is my first experience with one of Hot Toys' Hono Studio figures. You can see it's specifically branded as Hono Studios right there on the package. And these are meant to be comic figures, which is pretty clear based on the artwork here. This is a very, very comic looking artwork. You've got a comic logo, you have hand-drawn stuff, not the typical like high-end photography that we see with most of their other products. Very, very comic, amazing Spider-Man logo up top. On the sides, a little bit more of that. It says Spider-Man and the shadow stripe there. And of course on the back, you actually have the product images. So here is the figure itself. You can see the web backpack, lots of mumbo jumbo, more of the same on this side though. Instead of the word Spider-Man, you've got a big spider eye and then just the same logo on the bottom. Pretty cool packaging. This is actually an overlay, so we'll pull that out in a second. This is Hono Studios number 4. It's the first one that I've picked up, though. I think the very first one was Yellow Wolverine, then Magneto, then Brown Wolverine. They looked good, but I wasn't quite ready to pull the trigger. But as soon as I saw this one, I wanted to. Now, budget for Hot Toys means something very different than budget for me. This thing was still, I think, almost $200. I mean, maybe it was $189. I ordered mine off a Big Bad Toy Store, and it came in a couple of weeks ago. I'm finally getting around to cracking it open. That's not exactly budget. I suppose it's better than what we're paying for a lot of Hot Toys these days, which is looking for upwards of $300. But, this is by no means budget, no matter what they say. Love the black logo there. So this comes right off. Oh, actually, it folds down, and you've got a tab. So let's see. Oh, that's another, actually, folds both ways. So you get that, and then here is what we see. Hono Studio Collectibles, exploring playful collectibles with boundless possibilities. Hot Toys presents Hono Studios, a collective of distinct artists from the toy scene and the entertainment industry. On and on and on. Timeless appeal. Pretty cool. Oh, looky here on the inside, you get the instructions. So you get some ideas about how the articulation actually works, how you can add in the web effects, what to do, what not to do. Nice kind of full body image of the figure. This is the first time that I've seen them use the cardboard cutouts in this way. You get a checklist of everything that's coming, including, looks like we're going to get a comic with a stand. We're going to get the cover to Secret Wars issue 8. All right, that's not bad. Kind of like that. But you know what you're waiting for. You just want me to move this piece of cardboard. Oh, there it is. Here we go. Here's the figure itself, looking really, really good. All right, way too much plastic. Let's get this thing out and see what we're dealing with. I had wanted to show you the base for this thing first with the Secret Wars issue 8 on display, but doesn't quite work like that. You can see we've got like a relatively flat square base, much larger in size than what we typically get with our Hot Toys figures. The stand, I'm going to have to see how this works because it's just one clear post with like one sort of hook. I don't know if that's supposed to hook underneath his arms or if he's supposed to balance on that. But the part that I thought was going to be really cool, the comic base, it's cool. This is the size of a comic, but it didn't come with an insert. When you open up the back of the package, the comic is right there. And look, they want you to actually cut out the box in order to get the cover of Secret Wars 8. There's no way that I'm doing that. I'm not cutting this box up to get a replica cover. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, I take it back. I'm doing this live. Give me a break. So, all right, so it is its own separate piece of cardboard, but you still have to cut it open. Now, there's good news because I just happened to have a comic around, and it turns out it's the exact same size. So they did make it the same size as a regular comic. So if you had an extra copy or a reprint copy or some version of Spidey in the black suit that you wanted to put in here, it will slide right in and you can use it as part of your display. Now you may ask, why on earth did I have this comic lying around in my office? Well, it's because this is the one that I had a letter printed in all the way back in like 1992. So just kind of, this one's cover comes off. It's been beaten up pretty good, but the good news is that cutout, which is terrible that you have to actually cut something out, is the same size as a normal comic. So you can get kind of an interesting display out of this. All right, let's get to the stuff that we all want to see. I've gotten rid of all the doodads and jigamahiggies and all the little packaging things so that we can actually see the figure itself. Looks pretty good in the package. You've got fists and 3 extra sets of hands. Instead of the millions of web effects, you get 2. Now, nice thing, great underwire. Look at that. You can really bend those webs into any kind of shape. So you get basically a short one and a long one. You get the web backpack, and we're going to have to see. That's pretty loose. Not nearly as firm as what we saw with the webs. So hopefully that'll actually go over his shoulders without too much difficulty. It's really comic accurate. Pete would use this all the time in the books. There's the shorter web, and we do get a second set of eyes, so we're going to look at all of those things, but let's grab him and see what he feels like. First impressions are pretty good. It feels maybe a little bit lighter than a typical hot toy, like maybe the body is a little bit lighter on the inside, but that could also be due to the fact that this figure just doesn't have a lot of extra stuff. He doesn't have a big cape. He's not wearing Iron Man's armor. He doesn't have Captain America's shield. It's just, the body in a jumpsuit. And the jumpsuit itself, unlike what we get with most of our MCU Hot Toys, which are really the ones that I've bought up until this point, they were much more leathery, kind of pleathery, that harder, firmer material. This is really soft. So it almost feels like what you would get with like a Famous Covers figure. So way softer material, which I think totally fits. It's more of like a nylon. I think that totally goes with the comic look of it. The joints have got ratchets. So they actually, we'll see if we can hear it. I don't know if you could hear that up against the microphone or not, but they ratchet into place. So they're going to stay. You can hear that with the shoulder. Hear that ratcheting? Okay, very cool. So these things are definitely going to stay in place pretty nicely. I went ahead and I took off the 2 fist hands and went with some of the more dynamic hands. He's got really good, like classic wall crawlers, but these are the more just sort of, doing their own thing. When you come down here, the footies, the costume does go all the way over the foot. Now the foot does, it looks like it wants to have a joint there. That's not a joint. It's split, but no, that does not articulate. So you're not going to get toe articulation on these. You get pretty great stuff with that shoulder, though. That's going to do... Oh, and it's got a drop down. You can kind of see how the costume drops down a little bit. So you get good movement with that. The head is a separate piece. So you can see the costume comes up, but then the head, it doesn't go from the bodysuit all the way up to the head, which is a really good call. We've had Spider-Man where it's all one piece and the head just is really bunchy. It bags up at the neck. This one, much cleaner than that. The logo, pretty daggum classic. That looks exactly like kind of my vision of what the Spidey black suit is. And to give you a little bit of history on the black suit, theoretically, its first appearance was in Secret Wars issue 8. That was where Spidey's suit had been torn up. They had just kind of completed a battle with the bad guys, and he saw that Hulk had new pants and Thor had a new costume. And so they're like, yeah, there's a machine in there. You just think into it and it'll give you new clothes. And he's like, okay. So he goes in and this little black ball appears in his hand and then slithers all over his body. And that turned out to be the symbiote that would go on to become Venom, that would go on to really change the entire history of the Marvel Universe. But the first time that the suit actually appeared in comics was with issue 252 of Amazing Spider-Man. Secret Wars ran while the regular books were still going, so Spidey disappeared 1 month, came back in issue 252 wearing the black costume. And it has an absolutely incredible Ron Frenz, Klaus Janson cover. Now, there's a little bit of controversy because Spidey had 3 ongoing titles at that time. He not only was in Amazing Spider-Man, he also was in Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, as well as Marvel Team Up. And there have long been rumors that that month's issue of Marvel Team Up, where Spidey teamed up with, I guess, Daredevil and the Black Widow, with a great cover drawn by Art Adams, the master Art Adams, that one actually made it to newsstands first. Now, I have researched this numerous times over the years, and I cannot find any definitive proof that that book made it to stands first. I know I got that from my local newsstand before I actually got both Peter Parker and Marvel Team Up before I saw Amazing Spider-Man 252. But, you know, you're talking about a country store in Taylor, South Carolina. For those of you who are going to go looking for it, it was the Garden Spot on Lee Road is where I picked all those up. So a little piece of history there. I wish that I had gotten their spinner rack when they got rid of that thing. But that's where I got all my books, back then. So that was the first appearance of the black suit. And I bet you guys would never guess how long Spidey, in like human time, in our time, how long he wore the black suit. I would bet that if most of you were going to hazard a guess, you would say 2 years. He wore it for like 2 years in the comics, like 24 issues. No, it was 6 issues. In issue 258, so remember, it premieres in issue 252. By issue 258, he has given it up to Reed Richards to study. He goes over to the Baxter building. They realize that it's alive. They capture it. They use the sonics to trap it, and it's gone. So 6 issues. It really was kind of just a publicity stunt, but it was so unbelievably popular that it made a pretty quick comeback. The Black Cat sewed him a suit, which that's what I'm going to call this, because this has more of that nylon material. It feels like it's more of like the sewn together suit, and really all the way up through issue 300. So for the next 40 or so issues, he would kind of alternate wearing the black suit and wearing his red and blues. He was wearing the black suit during his unbelievable battle with Firelord, one of the greatest 2-part stories ever told. And then it really wasn't until Venom appeared that he stopped wearing it. The Venom suit, Venom himself freaked MJ out so badly that she asked him never to wear it again. So he didn't for a long time. It did come back occasionally. It was usually a special occasion. Once I remember during Todd McFarlane's run where he was writing and drawing the adjectiveless Spider-Man title, and Spidey, I think, went down into the sewers maybe to go after the Lizard, and he brought out the black suit for that mission. Another time, kind of in sort of that JMS heyday where there was like a Back in Black storyline where I guess Spidey was kind of, all rough and tumble bad guy sort of thing. He brought the black suit out. But the actual black suit, the actual symbiote suit only lasted 7 issues in Amazing Spider-Man. Kind of crazy to think about how great the legacy of this thing is for such a relatively short period of time. Amazing. So let's grab a couple of the accessories and see how they look on the figure itself.
If the intersection of comics, history, and action figures is your thing, you are in the right place. Give the video a like and subscribe to Carbon Scoring, because we're bringing you quality content like this every week.
Credit where credit is due. This backpack actually went on fairly easily. I didn't have to feel like I was ratcheting his shoulders out of place. These are just loose enough that you could get it around his shoulders and fit onto his back pretty well. It sits really nicely. It sits kind of right there at his lower back. And you can see it looks like what a webbed up sack of his clothes would be. It's heavier at the bottom, great web pattern all the way around, very McFarlane-esque webs coming around this way. That's pretty nice. I don't know that I would ever display it with the backpack, but that's kind of a cool, that's a different kind of cool accessory. We've looked at this pair of dynamic hands, and I like these. They rotate and move really well, and if you watch, they're on a ratchet joint too, so they're not going to be loose. They're actually going to stay right where you want them. So if you want him up in a little bit more of a shocked or excited pose, it's going to work. I like that they're not symmetrical, that this one is fairly flat, whereas this one has the fingers kind of splayed out a little bit more. It's actually a nice touch. Let's take a look at the next set. We've got some pretty classic wall crawlers. You can see, I love it when you can tell that there's pressure points on the tips of his fingers and his knuckles are bent back. And you can see that on both hands. Once again, these are asymmetrical. Here, the middle two fingers are together. Here, they're completely flayed out. It's a simple thing, but it's a really nice touch. And when you want to mix and match these hands together, that's really good. Plus, look at that. You can bend. There it goes. What you get for talking about this while you're doing it. You can bend these back really well. So his head, if you get his back arched up, you can definitely get kind of his head upright. No, that looks good. Look at that. So that actually looks like some pretty legit wall crawling. Now, it would make a huge difference if you actually had the toe pivot there. But from that angle, that's a pretty good looking wall crawling look. And a lot of that is because of how much range of motion you're able to get in these hands. I have to say too, the knobs that they're on are a little bit bigger than what I seem to remember with some previous Hot Toys. So they snap in and out a whole lot easier. And I don't feel like I'm about to break the damn things every time I try to switch the hands out. 2 more sets. Let's look at those. These are the ones that he was wearing in the package. And I thought they were just fists, but it turns out they're not. They've got holes. So these are web gripping hands. Really nice, that white patch right there. So, we can grab one of our really good, really, really good looking webs. Great underwire, good steady hold to that. And we can slide it. Actually, that's probably the thick end. Yeah, this is the end that I think is meant to go in there a little bit easier. And yeah, he holds that really well. And of course, like I said, you can McFarlane these up. You can get them into some serious twisty poses. So that's pretty cool. I don't tend to use the fisty grabby hands very often, just my posing and the way that I do it on the shelf. These usually aren't the ones that I like, but they're pretty functional. And again, because of all of those ratchets, you can get him holding them in a lot of different angles. Oh, I missed something with these. Okay, remember, this is really kind of representing 2 different suits. Like I had said earlier, the symbiote suit produced its own webs. It was like part of the symbiote itself. And so when Spidey shot webs when he was wearing the symbiote suit, he had his hands like this, and the webs came out of the top. And if we look really closely, I think we can see it. There's a plug-in right there and right there. So the smaller web line, the other one has it too, but the smaller web line is going to plug directly into that space. And so if you're using this as a true symbiote suit, you would have his hands in this position to shoot his webs out. So that's actually pretty cool. That is comic accurate to do it that way. But like I mentioned, this suit kind of morphed into a cloth costume for a while. Let's see what the thwippy hands look like with that. This is a legitimately nice touch, guys. I really do want to reinforce that this is well thought out, because here he's got his classic thwippers, and look, whoop, you can see there's the attachment for the webs underneath. So let's grab our smaller web. It's going to slot very easily right into there. So if this is cloth costume black suit Spider-Man post getting rid of the symbiote to Reed Richards before it ended up in the bell tower in Web of Spider-Man issue 1 and bonded with Eddie Brock forming Venom, then you can use these hands and it'll thwip right out of there. So very, very choice. Small details, but when you're paying close to $200, this is the kind of attention to detail that we really want to see. I like that. I'm very thankful for that. That is a cool look. And it'll work with both of them. The larger web will peg right into that hand as well. Pretty nice. Now we got to talk about the eyes because when you're talking about different artists' versions of Spider-Man, it's the eyes that really make the difference. It's one thing if we're talking about a hot toy that's based off of an MCU look. I mean, that's pretty defined. We all saw what those looked like on the screen. But if you're going with a comic figure, there is a lot of variability. And the black suit was, well, it was originally proposed by a fan named Randy Schuler, who wrote in that he thought Spidey should have a black suit with like red highlights and kind of drew it out. And Jim Shooter, the editor in chief of Marvel Comics, actually really loved the idea and paid Randy, I think it was $150 for the idea. So, everybody was happy. But then Shooter was the one who was actually writing Secret Wars, and that was when the black suit appeared. So the suit itself, the actual gorgeous design for this suit with the huge spider that wraps around the back and the black with just the hint of white on the back of the hands. That actually was created by Mike Zeck. So Mike Zeck was the artist on Secret Wars and one of the greatest artists in Marvel history. His run on Captain America was just spectacular. The work he did on Punisher, you got to check that out. His eyes were much more in line with what Spidey's eyes looked like at the time. They were smaller. They were more in that John Romita Sr. style. I would argue these are actually a little bit bigger than the Mike Zeck eyes. And then Spidey immediately kicked over to the Amazing Spider-Man title, which at the time was drawn by Ron Frenz. And Ron Frenz, one of my favorite artists, he kind of kept those smaller eyes, much more in line with, again, the Romita Sr. kind of style guide. But Frenz would occasionally throw some big Ditko angles where, Spidey was coming at you from one of those crazy, zany Ditko angles, and the eyes would appear a little bit bigger. But it wasn't until a young artist with issue 298 picked up the title that we saw a completely different look with the eyes. And thankfully, we got a copy of those too. Everything changed with the publication of Amazing Spider-Man 298. That was the issue where Todd McFarlane took over on the title, and he instantly revolutionized Spidey's look. Gone were the tiny little eyes. In their place were these huge peepers that became the standard for the rest of time. Gone was static posing. Now Spidey was getting into absolutely incredible acrobatic posing. The simple webbing that we had become used to was gone. It was all spaghetti webbing, incredibly detailed stuff. And the execution of the switch of this for this figure is really good. Some of you may have seen my video on the exclusive Hot Toys Red and Blue comic Spidey that I got. That thing was like a Hong Kong exclusive. And on that, it did come with separate sets of eyes, but they were actually carved in. And so because the base, the interior carving was so large, you could change the black highlights around the eyes, but the shape of them had to stay the same. This, because it's the cloth costume all the way around, is so much easier. The eyes are actually on a simple magnet. So on the flip side of this, you can see there's the magnet, and it's actually really simple to take the other pair and set it right there. So this gives you an idea of just how different the McFarlane sized eyes are compared to the Zeck Friends sized eyes. But again, they come right off. They stay on. I mean, you guys have watched me, whirling this figure around. It's not like, the magnets hold pretty well. They're not, they're not coming off. But if you put a little bit of pressure on them, they will snap off really easily. But because there's a little bit of an inset that allows the magnet to sink in there, but you're able to change these eyes out really easily. I think this is actually a pretty cool feature of this thing.
So my overall impression is that this is really good. I don't appreciate any drop off in quality from this Hono Studios figure compared to a regular Hot Toys figure. I initially thought it was a little bit lighter, but now I think it's more a reflection of the simplicity of the comic costume, where it's just basically a bodysuit compared to the intricate suits of the MCU figures that those end up with. I've got no complaints with the articulation. I really played with this thing during this review, and it moved great. Lots of bend and flex, and this more nylon bodysuit, I have way less concern of it splitting and cracking over time compared to the more leathery plastic of my other Hot Toys. Yeah, I would have liked that toe joint, but really that's the only kind of minor fuss. You do get fewer accessories with this one, not as many sets of hands, and not as many web effects, which is totally fine by me. I mean, how many do you need? Those typically just end up in a Ziploc bag in the bottom of a box anyway. The ones they gave us were the essential ones, so I'm happy with the stuff that it came with. Now to price. I am never going to tell you how to spend your money. You're not going to get judgment from me if you think this thing is ridiculously overpriced and the whole action figure world has gone mad. I get it. This is a hobby. This is disposable income, and we're all in different places with this. I do want to remind everybody I don't get any of these figures for free. I pay full price for everything you see on this channel. I think it's important that if I like something, if I say that I like it, it's because I like it, not because somebody gave it to me. That said, this bad boy was roughly 200 bucks. Is that better than getting two Mafex black suit Spideys? Yeah, probably. Is it worth four maximum Spider-Men? Now I'm not so sure. For my enjoyment and posability and how it looks on a shelf, the $50 to $100 less that this thing costs compared to an MCU Hot Toys figure is actually pretty good. But let's not act like this is a bargain. This is a high end collectible, and thankfully, I think it holds up. But how about y'all? Are you interested in picking this up? I have the Hono Toys Studios Iron Man pre ordered. Would you like to see a review of that one when it comes out? Let me know in the comments. And as always, for the best in comics history and action figures, subscribe to Carbon Scoring.